The humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to worsen, but a small breakthrough has emerged. The Rafah border crossing has reopened, allowing for evacuation of sick and wounded children in desperate need of medical care. As ceasefire negotiations stall, detainee exchange continue, shaping the delicate balance of diplomacy and conflict in the region. Meanwhile, a new wave of US tariffs on Canada, Mexico and China has sent shockwaves through global markets. With trading partners hitting back, fears of an escalating trade war growing raise questions about its impacts on consumers worldwide. Let's get in focus.
Donald Trump is his name, and he's there to stay.
As unlikely, impossible is now reality.
America powerful. We will win, win, win. And we will make America great again. We will very quickly make America great again.
We'll start from the United States, and the United States has imposed new tariffs on Canada, Mexico and China, sparking concerns about a potential trade war. The measures include a 25% tariff on most Canadian and Mexican imports, a 10% tariff on Chinese goods, and a special 10% rate on Canadian energy resources. The move has triggered retaliatory actions from Canada and Mexico, raising questions about economic stability and global supply chains and diplomatic relations. With inflation concerns already weighing on US consumers, will these tariffs boost domestic industries or lead to higher prices and job losses? Now, before we break down the economic impact, let's examine how the situation is being reported. The Guardian highlights growing fears of a trade war as markets brace for losses following Canada and Mexico's swift retaliation. The report warns of rising consumer prices, economic slowdowns, and potential recession risks in North America. With $155 billion in counter tariffs targeting key US exports, economists predict higher fuel costs weakened investor confidence and disrupted supply chains. The EU and China may also respond, amplifying global economic uncertainty instead of boosting US industry. These tariffs risk inflation and financial instability on a global scale. And to analyze the implication of these tariffs and their potential fallout, we are joined by Justin Thomas Russell, Executive Director of the Global Foreign Policy Center of Washington. Good evening to you, Mr. Russell, and welcome to Qnews. And let me here ask you, these tariffs have been described as one of the biggest shifts in the US trade policy in years. What is the economic rationale behind this decision?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me as always. The rationale is that this is part of Donald Trump's America First policy. Donald Trump, in his mind, and according to his advisors, feels that the U.S. is unfairly targeted in international trade. U.S. supplied products such as cars, such as U.S.-made electronics, heavy goods such as appliances, they are taxed unfairly when they go overseas, and we don't retaliate. That's according to his mind. The reality is that this is a very dangerous trade war, not just for the U.S. economy, but for the global economy as a whole.
Now, from your point of view, Canada and Mexico are two of the largest trading partners of the United States. How will these tariffs impact North American trade and economic relations?
Well, when it affects trade in a great deal, again, as you pointed out, these are the two biggest trading partners, or two of the biggest trading partners that the U.S. has. The cross-border trading has, created free trade zones and free trade agreements between the three countries, including one that was done by Donald Trump, which he says is incredibly successful. The problem is that now that we are getting into a tariff trade war, we've seen President Sheinbaum in Mexico and Prime Minister Trudeau in Canada say that they're going to retaliate with similar 25% tariffs on American products. This creates a continental trade war, which none of the economies can handle. We're going to be paying more for products coming from Canada, such as wood, aluminum, iron and steel made appliances that are made there. Even our cars, our trucks, a lot of the components are made in both Mexico and Canada. So those prices are going to come down to the manufacturers here in the United States, and those prices are going to be passed on to consumers. That's the key here. Trump is making it sound like the trading countries that we're involved with are going to be paying these tariffs. The reality is, everybody knows that the consumers are going to hold the brunt of these tariffs, and that means higher prices for U.S. citizens in the U.S. economy.
Now, speaking here, or you respectively spoke about a larger war, you even spoke about a continental trade war. What could be the scope of such a war?
Well, the scope is, if we are getting into a continental trade war, for example, a majority of the Canadians live within driving distance of the U.S. border. In places like, Ontario, in places like Quebec, a lot of the Canadians will cross the border and go shopping in the United States for various products. The reality is if we start, if they start coming over to the U.S. to go to a Costco, let's say, and they go back to the border to cross back home, and they're hit with a 25% tariff on a $400 food bill, that's going to be very costly to them. That's going to prevent them from engaging in commerce in the U.S. that they would normally do. On the broader scale, what we're looking at is the fact that, if we are starting to create a situation, because we have had such a close trade relationship, when we talk about the components of cars being built in either Mexico or in Canada, and them being shipped and tariffed before they're put into full production on the line for cars and trucks built in the United States, that's going to cause the cost of cars to go up. That means that not many people are going to be buying new cars, which means that we're going to start seeing job losses in industry that Donald Trump said he swore to protect. That's the U.S. auto workers. So global implications that could have.
That brings us to China. And the 10% tariff on the Chinese good is definitely lower than the 25 rate of that of Canada and Mexico. Now, from your point of view, does this signal a shift in the U.S. economic strategy towards China? Or what are we expecting here towards China?
Well, in my opinion, Donald Trump and the Trump administration is playing a very dangerous game of economic chicken, as we would say here in the United States. What's happening here is that we have become, as a nation and as a national economy here in the United States, so reliant on just-in-time logistics, and we, quite frankly, have become entitled and somewhat spoiled with the low prices by products that we import from China. Everything from cheap flat screen TVs to cheap clothing to cheap food products, etc. The reliance on the Chinese products here in the U.S. economy to keep prices low is remarkable. At the same time, the Chinese economy requires that U.S. market to buy those products. If we start shutting that down, if we stop buying those products, because now instead of paying $300 for a big screen TV, we now have to pay close to $800 for a big screen TV. That's going to be a problem for the Chinese economy, and then they start losing production capabilities. They start losing market share in the West. It becomes a ripple effect on the global economy from there, because if the Chinese aren't shipping out or spending money that they're creating through the trade with the U.S., and the U.S. market can't afford to buy new products, this becomes a global economic problem that ripples out to all our allies and the allies of the Chinese economy.
But you spoke about how would that reflect on the industries such as the automotive, the agriculture, and the retail, definitely. Now, these are all expected to bear the brunt of higher costs. Now, how will that affect the American businesses and consumers, and how will the Americans deal with this?
Well, it's going to affect the the American economy and all Americans in the one place that Americans voted in this past election in November of 2024. That's in the pocketbook. Look, nobody said that Donald Trump was the greatest, most stand-up guy in the country that we could elect president. These were people that were voting on their pocketbook, on the economics. The inflation had risen under Joe Biden. It had started coming down, but prices were still up for simple products like eggs and butter and milk. They vote with their pocketbook here in the United States. The problem that Donald Trump is kind of playing a little bit of a game here, it's almost like a duel, is the fact that, when he said he's going to make America great again and make the American economy strong again, if prices go up and people can't afford the products that they couldn't afford under the Biden administration, and even more so under the second Trump administration, that could be very politically harmful for him, and he's going to lose the trust of many of the swing voters in the United States that might have swung Donald Trump's way because they believed his approach to trade and the economy was much better than the Democrats and Kamala Harris.
Right. That was Mr. Russell. We thank you so much for those analysis, and definitely the new U.S. tariffs have already set off economic and political reactions worldwide, with Canada, Mexico, and China pushing back. As trade tensions escalate, businesses, consumers, and policymakers will need to navigate an increasingly uncertain economic landscape. Now we turn to Gaza, where the humanitarian crisis already been dire. We navigate into that. Right, to Gaza. And as Gaza's humanitarian crisis deepens, the Rafah border crossing has reopened, offering a lifeline for sick and wounded children awaiting evacuation. Amid tense ceasefire negotiations, the world watches as Palestinian detainees are freed, while leaders from Egypt to the United States discuss the fate of the region. With Israel's Prime Minister under pressure, the question remains, will this conflict ever truly end? Now, the Haaretz has reported that the Rafah border crossing has reopened, allowing the first group of 50 sick and wounded Palestinian children to cross into Egypt for medical treatment. This marks a crucial development in the Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal. Following the release of female detainees by Hamas, however, Gaza's health system remains devastated, hospitals unable to cope with overwhelming number of casualties. The Palestinian Health Ministry reports over 110,000 injuries and thousands of patients urgently need treatment abroad. Though the number of evacuations is limited, negotiations for a broader ceasefire and Israel's full withdrawal from Gaza are set to begin soon, with the future management of the Rafah crossing still a point of contention. Providing more analysis about most recent updates concerning the crisis in Gaza, we're joined from the occupied Jerusalem by Dr. Abdel Nasser Makki, a political science professor. Good evening to you, sir, and welcome to Qnews. If I may start with, how significant is the reopening of the Rafah for Gaza's ongoing medical and humanitarian crisis?
Yes, I think the reopening is a good signal, but it's not enough because, as you know, the demand is big. We are talking about thousands of people who should go outside in order to receive, that treatment, which is not in Gaza. Because, as you know, Gaza hospitals have been destroyed. And about 50 just patient every day they are allowing to go from border. Rafah border is not enough, and I think they should discuss this because if you are talking about thousands of people, when these people will go outside, when they will take treatment, maybe some of them they will die. Even this is talking about the children. So it's a good signal. It's good step, but it need to be increasing much more than this. So I think they should discuss this matter maybe in the second stage, which will be supposed to be tomorrow. As you know, Netanyahu today left to Washington, and he will discuss this with Trump, and he stopped now sending the delegation, and he also changed the delegation. So he will send it maybe tomorrow, according to his discussion and negotiation and meeting with the Trump.
Right. Now, with over 110,000 injuries reported, how can the Gaza devastated health sector handle the urgent need for treatment at this very particular time?
I think they should have entering hospitals like field Facebook hospitals, and I think one of them now, I think from the Emirat, they will allow them to enter Gaza, and also they should discuss this matter to enter many of these hospitals and to increase the number of the beds for the people and do reconstruction and also to renovation the hospital in Gaza in order to start making the surgery there, and also to provide the hospitals with the necessary, equipment which needed to make surgery in Gaza. Otherwise, I don't think so that it will be good, and it will be a negative in this agreement.
Now, Dr. Makki, how significant has been the role played by Egypt in discussing and facilitating the ceasefire and future diplomatic resolutions in Gaza?
I think Egypt play a significant role in this, and also in the Egypt, as you know, it was the not mediators. Also, they are the country that they provide assistance to the Palestinian. They are also provide all the assistance in even diplomatic, like they also was there in Qatar, with Qatar. So it was good from Egypt. I think be in the future there will be maybe a strong and big role for Egypt, because Egypt is the biggest that country on the area, and also Egypt has all the elements that could provide Gaza with all they needed, like the medicine, like the equipment. So yes, I think Egypt was strong and a good player, even in Qatar and also in Egypt. And even we are talking about the other thing concerning the committee supporting for the Palestinian. Egypt was the country that formulated this committee, as you know, for the Palestinian internal issues between Hamas and between Fatah, and between also the PNA and also between Hamas, in order that this committee should be there in order to manage and to organize the life in Gaza.
On the other hand, we've seen increasing clashes in Jenin and the West Bank. Now, how would that further shape the Palestinian resistance against the Israeli occupation?
Yes, I think there's clashes in Jenin, but you know, Jenin is not like Gaza. We are not making a comparison between Jenin and Gaza, and even West Bank. And like we are talking about the north part of West Bank, like Jenin, Nablus, and Tulkarem, and Kalkilia, and the refugee camps there. So the comparison is not good because Gaza is different. They have many weapons there. They are
Definitely, they are
different.
not the same, and the aggression or the attacks are not the same, but there are still attacked. So how
Yeah,
will
but
that
today,
how will that reflect on shaping up the actions of the resistance, the Palestinian resistance?
in which bank you mean? The
Excuse me?
Palestinian resistance in West Bank.
Yes, I'm speaking about the West Bank.
Yes, you know that's even, I will tell you something. Today, the Israeli, they destroy 100 house in refugee camp of Jenin. And they also now they are destroying and also they are attacking now Jenin, Tumun, Tubas, about 4 governorates. I think there is a big attacking now in this area. They're killing about 50 persons. They arrested 110. And also they are continuing. They said
Why
they
do you
will
think?
continue.
Why do you think they are carrying out with such actions?
Because as you know, there are many reasons. First of all, they failed in Gaza. So they want to send a message to their people, and especially Netanyahu, in order that he could shift this subject from Gaza to West Bank. And also at the same time, he want to satisfy like the extreme, that's ministers like Smotrich and Ben Gvir, was the dealing and discussion before when they discussed this last Friday, and after that he agreed that he will go to West Bank and they will start to remove and to to problem of the refugee camp, and after that to start the annexation in West Bank, which is one of the demands of Smotrich or Netanyahu in order to stay in the government. Otherwise, he will withdraw from the government, and this will collapse the government.
Now, with such Israeli military actions escalating in the West Bank, what could be the future of the West Bank under the ongoing destruction and expansion of barriers?
Something that could be discussed tomorrow. I think Netanyahu will discuss this matter with Trump, and it will be discussion in board like, to speak about West Bank just itself. I think it will be like to discuss the regional solution for the Middle East. This one thing. Another thing is that for the West Bank, you know that it's something complicated here in West Bank because, as you know, we are facing problem from the settlements. We have about maybe 250 settlements, and also we have about 900 checkpoints. So the West Bank is like all this.
Yes. Mr. Makki, are you still with us? No. That was Dr. Abdel Nasser Makki, political science professor from the occupied Jerusalem. We thank you so much for your special analysis and for your insights. And the Rafah border reopening offered a glimpse of relief amid Gaza's worsening humanitarian crisis, but the path to a lasting ceasefire remains uncertain. While detainee exchange continue, political and diplomatic divisions stand in the way of long-term peace. Meanwhile, U.S. tariffs we've been speaking about, and I guess that was really our second topic, and definitely we are still awaiting for what will come out from the tariffs that were imposed on Canada and Mexico and China. That was me, Mona Moselhi, thanking you for joining us in Focus today. Many thanks for watching and see you next time.